It has officially been 2 months since I bought the Canon Powershot V1, and now that I've had some time to use it on a bunch of different shoots, I feel like I can better talk about the pros and cons of it, and also the good and the bad that come with the form factor of the point and shoot camera. I didn't really think about this much when I got the camera, but its form factor, combined with the fact that it costs a lot less than something like my R5, makes it a really great camera for giving to other people for shooting. People who are not photographers. Visiting a friend's cottage, I could give her the V1 and she could run around and take some fun photos. Or I shot a wedding recently where I just set up the V1 with a little panel light on top and a little tripod handle on the bottom. And I let the groomsmen run around with the camera and get some great like vlogging style content that I just would not have gotten otherwise, and they loved it. It was a huge hit. This is quickly becoming one of my favorite things about the V1 because if I was gonna hand my R5 to someone that never takes photos, the initial response I get is usually the same, which is, oh wow, there's so many buttons on this camera, this thing is huge. And oh, don't worry, I'll be sure not to drop it. I'm sure it's very expensive. I wouldn't wanna drop it or wreck it or anything. And what button do I press, by the way, to take the photo? How does this work? And honestly, that's understandable. But when I hand someone the V1, the response is usually, oh man, this is so cool. I used to have a camera just like this 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And it's instantly much more familiar for someone who does not take photos very often, which allows me to just hand it off to anyone I want and they can run around and take a bunch of cool photos too. And although the V1 is still a not insignificant amount of money, I feel a lot better about handing this off to a drunk groomsman than my R5 with the 24-70 on it. Now let's talk about the photo and video image quality that comes out of this camera. Obviously, it's not going to be as good as something that comes out of my professional cameras, but honestly, the quality is still very good for photo and video. Canon is clearly advertising this as a video first camera, but I've actually been using it a lot for photos with a lot of success. The colors are noticeably a little different than the professional Canon colors, and there's obviously less dynamic range within this camera. Not as much detail can be pulled out of the shadows and highlights in a really high contrast scene, but overall the raw photos that come out of this camera are very flexible files and I can do a lot with them. Then when it comes to video, I think it's even better because the video that comes out of here with the C-Log 3 profile is so similar to what comes out of my R5 and R6 Mark II cameras, which makes this super easy to cut in with that footage and use it cohesively. And I still feel like I get a lot of that C-Log flexibility out of this camera. Like it doesn't feel like a cheapened down version of it. For vlogging videos like this or anything that's behind the scenes where I don't need a lot of depth of field, I feel really comfortable using this camera and still getting a great quality result that I don't feel like is lacking in any particular way. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of the form factor of this camera. The easiest pro is that it's super easy to bring around with me, which means I'm able to use it in a lot more scenarios where I wouldn't normally want to bring a camera. For example, I mentioned in my initial video about this camera that I wanted to bring it to an AC/DC concert, and I did with no problem. I brought it in, no hassle, no one stopped me or anything like that. It worked out perfectly fine. And although this lens isn't as zoomed in as some of these smaller sensor point and shoots out there, so I didn't get any like crazy close-ups of Angus or anything, I still got some really nice kind of environmental shots that I was really happy with. Just the other day, I also brought it out into a kayak, and while I was kayaking around, I got some cool photos. This camera is also, the V1's also small and light enough to be mounted on top of my regular camera in the hot shoe mount. So I've also used it as a great POV perspective, just straight on top of my camera for photos or mounted on my gimbal for videos. And this is giving me a really nice behind the scenes angle that I just couldn't really get before. Some people do this with their phones, but the quality that comes out of this camera, especially with the video and the flexibility of C-Log, makes it way better. Do you hear that? There's a bird that's been following me this whole walk. No matter how far I walk, he's following me through the trees and chirping at me. When it comes to overheating, it's been non-existent for me. I haven't had any problems. I've recorded straight for up to about 45 minutes in 24 frames per second. I haven't really needed 60 frames per second for anything right now. So honestly, no overheating issues. I have the fan set on auto, so it kicks in when it needs to. And I have the auto power off temperature set to high, and it works great. I can record a video like this and walk around for a while, or I can just leave it running on my camera set up for a while, and it's fine. Now for some downsides. The V1 has less buttons because it's smaller, and that makes sense, but this is most noticeable when changing the manual exposure. For me at least, I'm used to my bigger cameras with an individual dial for each camera setting for shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. This camera doesn't have that. I have one dial on the back and I have one dial on the lens. And I'm not really used to using the kind of control wheel to change my aperture, and I found it's very easy to bump accidentally while shooting and accidentally change my whole exposure. And for ISO, I don't have a dial for that at all, so I either have to change it by tapping on the screen and selecting my exposure, or I have to hit a button and then use the wheel, both of which are fine, but it definitely slows me down with my shooting a little bit, mostly just because it's not something I'm used to. Also, I know this is a video first camera, but sometimes I do miss having a viewfinder for taking photos. With that, I also wish Canon included a built-in flash in this camera, or at the very least, a low profile external flash that I could put on here. One of my biggest problems with the V1 is that it doesn't have the standard dumb hot shoe contact piece in the center of the hot shoe, which means the only way to use an electronic device in the hot shoe is through the smart shoe. This means you're limited only to the smart shoe accessories that Canon makes. You cannot put just a regular generic flash on this camera at all. And your options for that right now are basically only Canon's full-size EL5 speedlight. And that kind of sucks because the EL5 is 450 Canadian dollars, almost half the price of the entire V1, and it's giant. Bigger than the V1 by itself, kind of ruins the whole point of this small compact form factor. And the last sort of downside of the form factor is the battery life. It's not terrible by any means, but it does use the Canon LPE17 batteries, which are quite a bit smaller. And also the V1 doesn't come with a charger included, which means if you want to charge this up, you're stuck plugging it into USB-C unless you want to buy a charger separately, which is kind of annoying. I really wish Canon included one in the box. Overall though, I love the V1. It's really opened up my options for recording YouTube videos and behind the scenes and POV shots, and bringing it into casual settings where I just normally wouldn't have bothered to bring a camera at all, which is exactly what I was hoping to get out of it when I bought it. If you're looking for a camera that's fun and that will stay out of your way while you're trying to capture life's little moments, the V1 is a great option. Or as a behind the scenes angle even, it works great. I have no regrets buying this camera. Now if you're a beginner that doesn't have a camera at all and you're looking for your first one, I still don't know that I recommend this. I think something like a Canon R50V or an R10 would still be a much more versatile, cheaper, and probably a bit better quality option. But having this form factor and getting this good of a quality out of this form factor is something that I really appreciate for the type of work that I do. If you want to check out my full-length review on this camera, I'll link that on screen right now. You can check it out if you want to know more about the specs and some of the more details. But overall, 2 months in, I'm loving this camera and I'm going to keep using it for stuff like this as much as I can. But that's it for this one, just my quick thoughts. By the way, if you can't tell, this whole video is recorded on the V1 if you're also curious about how it looks in like high contrast situations. Let me walk out to the sun real quick. It's like the middle of the day here. This is tricky because I'm in manual exposure right now and the lighting keeps changing. It's still too overexposed. I don't know, how's it doing? This is like a real terrible lighting, high contrast situation right now. So that's all I got for you in this one. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, maybe subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. But thank you guys for watching. I will catch you in the next one.